What do you do when your wife announces a pregnancy the week you return from a work trip, and the dates don't add up? How can a calm husband face public denial, in-law pressure, and a smirking ex without rage? Only process. Can a single notice, served in daylight, end the performance and start the truth? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Ephraim Lyle, and I am 36, a fiber technician who fixes quiet problems inside loud cities. I came home from a week on the road, set 2 mugs on opposite counters, and listened while she announced a pregnancy that did not fit the calendar I carried in my head. She said surprises happen. I said I needed simple truth. I kept my tone even so the air in our kitchen would not crack. I opened a small spreadsheet and typed the trip dates, the day she posted confetti, and a short note that said timing mismatch. A cloud sync box blinked file uploaded successfully, and I closed it. A calendar reminder flashed Harbor 9:15 a.m., and I swiped it away. The thin binder labeled utilities felt heavier than bills, so I placed it under the lamp and left it shut. Our guest bed looked too neat, like a spare answer. A muted call lit my phone as private and went dark. I taped a small USB under the taxes folder and locked the drawer. The click steadied me. Our daughter, Rhea, asked if babies start before or after goodbyes. I told her honest things do not need a show. I told myself I would handle this properly. I woke before the alarm and stood in the hallway until the pipes settled into a soft hiss, the way they do when the building remembers how to breathe. The apartment held a thin quiet that made every small sound count. I made coffee and placed 2 mugs on opposite counters without thinking about it, and the space between them felt like a sentence I was not going to say out loud. Marla came in with her phone already bright and said timing was a miracle and that I should be happy first and practical later. I said I needed simple truth that matched days on a calendar, not stories built for applause. I kept my tone even so the air would not split. I opened my laptop and let a blank spreadsheet calm my hands. I typed my trip start, my trip end, the day she posted confetti, and a short line that said timing mismatch, check. A cloud sync pop-up announced file uploaded successfully like a small trumpet. I closed it fast because I did not want music in that room. A calendar reminder blinked Harbor 9:15 a.m., and I swiped it away before it could become a question. The thin binder labeled utilities sat under the lamp with a stubborn lift at one corner. I pressed the plastic down and felt it rise when I took my palm away. I set a sticky note that said bring forms under the lamp base so the paper would stop curling. Our guest bed looked too neat, like a spare answer waiting on a shelf. I smoothed the duvet because smooth surfaces sometimes keep my breath in a straight line. A muted call lit my screen as private and went dark. I slid a small USB under the lip of the taxes folder and pressed tape over it with my thumb. The tape pulled tight, and I liked the sound because it sounded like a decision. I locked the drawer and listened for the soft click that makes a house feel like it will hold. Rhea padded in with her hair still hugging sleep and asked if babies start before or after goodbyes. I told her honest things do not need a show. She nodded like a small scientist who had heard a clean rule. I packed her lunch and cut the apple the way she prefers, edges squared. Marla scrolled and smiled at her screen, then said, joy should not be audited. I said math is not an audit. It is a scale that keeps tables from tipping. I tied Rhea's shoes and let her try the knots once on her own, because practice is a promise you make to yourself. In the stairwell, the light was cooler, and I carried her backpack while she explained how a classmate always counts clouds. I said I was counting clouds, too, just in a different sky. She laughed because the thought felt round in her mouth. I drove to the school and watched Rhea hold the rail at the gate with that careful grip she learned from crossing slippery floors. She waved and ran safely toward a group that made space for her without being asked. I waited until the line behind me breathed a small reminder, then moved on. On the way to work, a billboard promised that more is better, and I let the promise slide off like rain on a good coat. The field office smelled like warm plastic and dust the way all equipment rooms do. I answered 2 tickets about a stubborn switch and a dead port and made notes in clean language. The rhythm steadied me. A text landed with a spray of emojis from a group chat I had been added to by accident years ago and never left because leaving starts arguments when you least need them. The text said, fate does its own math. I turned my phone face down and took 3 photos of the wall clock, then wrote the time into the spreadsheet so the file would show a small spine of facts. In the break corner, the small printer stirred and spit a blank page into the tray without anyone asking. I slid it into my notebook. Blank paper is a bridge you build before you know what you are crossing. I ate a sandwich without tasting it and read a maintenance bulletin about a splice method, because the calm tone of technical notes is a good place to sit when people are using adjectives like destiny on your behalf. A chat bubble from Bram, my manager, appeared in the corner asking for a quick word after lunch. I typed yes and returned to work, because staying good at your job is one way to keep the rest of your life from drawing you like a riptide. The afternoon brought a new tag that read business trips, breed surprises, and showed a blurry rooftop with arms and glasses raised. I took screenshots and saved them to Archive A with the link and the time, then closed my phone so my hands would not answer for my heart. I opened a clipboard and wrote one word at the top of a clean sheet, statement, and put the pen down on purpose. I tightened a barrel connector on a misbehaving fiber panel and watched the amber light go green like a long breath. I walked the loading dock and counted in sets of 4, in and out, because counting turns air into a railing you can hold when floors tilt. At the end of the shift, I drove past a gym where Kellen sometimes stands at the front desk like a picture that wants to be signed. He was not there. The poster with his face was. I let the red light tell me when to leave and then left. Back at the apartment, I flipped the mail stack so all the addresses face down. I put an unsealed envelope in the outbox where it could wait without making eye contact. I placed 3 narrow binders labeled Home, Auto, Bank in a clean line and slid the utilities binder beside them. I felt the corner lift and pressed it flat again the way people press grass at a picnic to pretend the ground is a table. Marla came through the hallway narrating into her camera about faith over fear. My laptop minimized its screen mid-edit when she passed behind me, because reflex can be a better guard than opinion. I cooked rice and grilled peppers and told Rhea a story about a ship that sailed by pointing at true things in the sky. She fell asleep 2 pages into the book, and I carried her to bed with her hand open on the paper like she had set down a rope. I stood in the doorway until my shoulders softened. I stepped back into the main room and stood inside the lamp's small circle that held the binders, the clipboard, the unsealed envelope, and the blank page in my notebook. I said one sentence once in a voice without edges. I said, "I will handle this properly." The sentence did not need a second try. Door latch clicks. The door latch clicked as Marla slipped out to get air. A text preview flashed and vanished on her screen, and the hallway swallowed her steps while my phone lit with private and went dark, and I knew the next noise would not be ours. The next morning, I woke early and listened to the building breathe. I made toast for Rhea and warmed her plate so the butter would not turn the bread brittle. She asked if we could read after homework tonight. I said we would try, and the word try made her smile like it had hands. Marla moved through the kitchen in a strong beam from her phone and said 2 influencers had messaged her about a collab on Miracle Timing. I said our daughter's name and face would not be in any post. She said I was small. I said I was careful. I poured coffee into the 2 mugs that still stood on opposite counters like 2 flags that do not need wind to mean something. A calendar reminder lit my phone with Harbor 9:15 a.m. again, and I swiped it away. I checked the USB under the taxes folder and pressed the tape with my thumb. It held. I placed the clipboard saying statement at the edge of the table and laid a pen across it without touching the pen. Rhea packed her backpack and tucked a small stone into the front pocket for luck. I tied her laces and walked her to the car while Marla narrated a story to her camera about patience being the enemy of joy. In the stairwell, I counted the steps in pairs because pairs balance. At the field office, the morning had the cool professionalism I rely on. I cleared a trouble ticket on a remote switch, replaced a faulty SFP that had been throwing drops, and logged the fix at a normal pace. The vent hummed a steady chord, and the light over my desk did not flicker. At 10, Bram sent a calendar block that simply said quick word. I walked to his corner where a faded plant tilts toward the only ridge of sun. He thanked me for keeping the help desk queue clean and asked if I needed time away from the floor. I said I was steady and documenting. He said he had seen tags and would appreciate a note if the company name appeared in a post. I said I would send it if that happened. He nodded with the exact weight of a person who understands both the rules of HR and the rules of being human. On my way back, the small printer by the mail slot stirred and fed another blank page. I took it and slid it behind yesterday's in my notebook. 2 blanks make a small bridge, 3 begin to feel like an actual crossing. At lunch, I walked the loading dock, watched dust float like tired confetti in a stripe of light, and let counting lower my heartbeat to a place where quiet lives. After lunch, a coworker sent me a message that read you good and a thumbs up. I answered steady, thanks, and left it there. A meme landed in a group tag with my name under a caption about business trips, math, and miracles. I took screenshots and placed them in Archive A with the time. I opened the spreadsheet and entered row lines without adjectives. Rooftop clip reposted, cousin added heart reaction, influencer DM hinted at collab. I closed the sheet. A cloud sync box said file uploaded successfully like it had rehearsed. I closed it and tapped the trackpad twice as if to erase the echo. A private call rang once and gave up. I let the phone stay face down because that is how it learns boundaries. At 3, Bram pinged me again and asked for a minute now if I had it. I said yes, and took a breath that fit inside 4 beats. He gestured toward a chair and said a rumor had reached the front desk through a friend of a friend, and that he did not care about rumors, but he cared about the brand on our shirts. I said I understood and was keeping names and posts outside the building like mud outside a clean office. He said good and asked me to keep him in the loop in case anything crossed the line. I said I would. He said the word support again, in a tone that was meant to balance me more than the chair did. I thanked him and stood. The printer near HR exhaled a blank page like a sigh it had saved for me. I slid it into the notebook behind the other 2. 3 blank sheets made a quiet wait that felt like a plan before words. On my way back to my desk, a coworker showed me a ticket with a flaky uplink. I traced the cable, reseated the module, and waited for the light to go steady green. It did. Small fixes matter because they are proof that some systems reward patience and clean hands. I left work and drove a slow loop that ended at the rooftop bar, not to join anything, but to measure it. The elevator looked like a sermon, so I took the stairs because stairs have no opinions. The bar smelled like citrus and heat. A cluster of faces turned toward the horizon where the city always pretends it is calm. Marla stood near the rail, her hand resting against her belly as if it were a punctuation mark. Kellen hovered 2 steps behind her like a shadow that learned how to smirk. A friend raised a phone and said, "Miracles do not need math, only faith." I stood far enough away that my breath did not belong to their air. I recorded 60 seconds of ambient sound with my phone against my leg, not aimed at anyone, because location and time count even when faces do not. I turned away before anyone could invite me into a frame. When the elevator doors opened, a wave of new laughter washed into the room and ran past me like water around a stone. At home, I flipped the mail stack again and put 1 envelope into the outbox where it waited like a polite question. I moved a short audio file with only a date into Archive B and watched the progress bar roll in a calm strip. The hallway smelled faintly of warm toner, as if someone had printed an apology and decided not to sign it. I set 3 narrow binders labeled Home, Auto, Bank along the edge of the table and pressed the Utilities binder flat 1 more time to test whether plastic can learn manners. I stood at the wall planner and let the red circle blur until it became just color. Marla passed behind me, and her screen lit with a text preview that disappeared before her thumb could claim it. She said a brand wanted to do a live about miracle timing and that my energy needed to be supportive. I said our daughter would not appear on any account. She laughed at the window and told it that fear creates small rooms. I placed 2 mugs on opposite counters because the hands know where to put truth, even when truth is quiet. Rhea read to me until her voice softened like the end of a song. She fell asleep with a finger still marking the page. I carried her to bed, folded the blanket edge under her chin, and stood in the doorway long enough to let my heart go into a low gear. The apartment, in that minute, felt like a ship at anchor. In the main room, I touched the drawer with the taped USB and listened again to the lock's soft memory of closing. I picked up the notebook with the 3 blank pages and set it beside the clipboard that says Statement. The pen lay across the top like a bar that will lift when the time decides it is time. I spoke 1 sentence in my head, and only once. I will handle this properly. I did not imagine counter-arguments or victory speeches or apologies that never arrive. I let the sentence be simple and let the lamp's circle be small, and I let the house breathe without me telling it how. Manager asks for a quick word. As I turned off the lamp, my phone buzzed with Bram's calendar block for tomorrow morning, another quick word, and at the same second a rooftop toast rose on a friend's feed with a caption about Fate's math, and the 2 sounds overlapped as if rails had already been laid toward a public room where stories end and logistics begin. The family restaurant carried a low buzz that felt rehearsed, the kind of sound rooms keep ready for birthdays and compromises. I held a paper-wrapped gift for a cousin's child and chose the chair that faced the window so I could watch the table in the glass. Balloons leaned toward salt shakers and paper crowns slumped under elbows. A banner said, "Celebrate simply, though nothing in the room was simple." Edith arranged place cards with a precision that tried to tame the air. She set Marla at the center with a spare seat 2 chairs down, as if a space could be for any friend, while everyone knew which friend fit. I let my breath find 4s and kept my hands still. The smell of warm bread and lemon cleaner drifted over plates. A cousin lifted a new phone like a small stage light and pointed it at the door. Marla came in glowing in a way cameras like. She held 1 palm over her stomach, as if punctuation had become a gesture. Kellen followed half a step behind, smiling with quiet teeth, and greeted a table 3 places away, not ours, as if geography were a kind of innocence. Edith made a small announcement about joy and blessings and asked the room to keep things light. She looked at me when she said light, as though my silence had mass. I said I would keep the aisle clear and reached for water. The first plates arrived and clattered like coins on a counter. A cousin asked Marla to tell the story of the surprise. Marla said timing proved love, and that numbers could learn manners if hearts taught them. Another cousin asked if I had cried with happiness. I said I had asked for the truth in plain days, not fireworks. I let my voice stay level so forks would not stop. A cousin played a short rooftop clip on a phone. It showed a rays of glasses against the sky and a hand on a chair back that did not belong to me. Laughter rose, faltered, then found itself again. Someone joked that math works, if love does. I watched the scene in the window reflection to soften edges. The glass turned faces into light shapes, and light shapes are easier to place in lists. I took a small note in my head with initials and a time. Edith leaned across bread and told me not to ruin cheer with counting. I said bread is easier to pass when the table is steady. A server asked for orders, and I pointed at a line on the menu without reading it. My phone buzzed with a tag, and I did not check it because fast hands can swing doors you are not ready to walk through. The cake arrived, a train with small candles that hissed, phones lifted like a field of stems leaning towards sun. Someone called for a toast to miracle timing. The table obeyed because tables like instructions as much as people do. Kellen raised a glass at the bar and tilted his chin in a way that puts a name into a story without saying it. Marla turned toward the lens more than toward any face. I stayed with my eyes on the glass and my shoulder a gray shape that did not move. I wrote 3 dry words at the back of my mind. Long table vote. A child clapped because sparklers make joy easy. I clapped once because the child had earned it, not the room. A cousin across from me whispered that I should smile for family unity. I said unity built on smog will make eyes water. He looked down and smoothed a napkin, then nodded because napkins know about absorbing mess without applause. I stood to refill water and used the movement to step outside for air. In the downstairs parking garage, concrete took heat out of my face. My steps echoed, and then another set matched mine for 3 beats, paused, and faded. I did not turn. I let the echo settle without naming it. The phone alarm labeled paper drop hummed, and I stopped it before the second tone. I typed 3 words into a lock screen note: echo, pause, breath, and put the phone away. I counted to 8 twice and went back upstairs. The lemon cleaner met me halfway, like a polite chaperone. Back at the table, someone had started a circle about trust and support. The circle wanted a show of hands. Hands rose with the simplicity of people who prefer answers that fit in captions. I kept mine down. Edith said I was making things heavy. I said I was eating. She frowned, as if the word eating refused to help her. A cousin asked Marla if the dates lined up. Marla said life is a mystery, and learning to trust makes math kind. The cousin nodded hard, like approval could be earned by force. A server cleared plates and dropped a fork, and it made a bright sound like a small alarm that nobody heeded. I paid my share when the check came and added a tip large enough to apologize to the person who had to watch us pretend. I left before a second toast could trap me in a chorus and drove past the gym lobby where Kellen likes to stand behind a desk with a crown sketch on a poster. He was there now, chin angled at his reflection in the glass. He nodded at the air in a way that tries to create agreement from movement. I looked at the crosswalk signal instead and left when it allowed. At home, 2 mugs waited on opposite counters like flags that keep still when wind behaves. I flipped the mail stack so addresses looked at the table, not me. I placed 3 narrow binders labeled home, auto, bank under the lamp in a line that practiced order. The thin utilities binder lifted at the corner when I let go. I pressed it flat and watched the curve return the way some habits do when you look away. My laptop minimized its screen the instant footsteps came down the hall. Reflex saves work you cannot afford to defend. Marla narrated into her phone about miracle timing and faith over fear. She needed verbs that offer daylight, not nouns that hold weight. I opened a clean text file and wrote a dry line. Cousin posted clip. Tag count increased. Tone dismissive of math. I moved the file into Archive A, and the cloud sync box lifted. File uploaded successfully. I closed it fast so the word successfully would not sit in that room like a joke that had lost its way. Rhea brought her book, and we read about a small ship that watched stars and not voices. She fell asleep with a finger on a line about charts. I carried the book to the table, set it near the clipboard that showed only statement, and placed the pen across the top like a bar that would lift later. Camera flash. A white square burned into my vision from a photo taken by a cousin at the table and sent to the family thread. And as the square thinned and drifted away, my phone lit with a thread called Follow-Up. Flashed once, then muted itself on my command, and I let the quiet set the table for the next room. The park the next afternoon had the soft noise of swings and shoe rubber. Rhea climbed the ladder and sat on the platform without sliding. She looked at the sky like it had answers. She asked if babies start before or after goodbyes. I said babies start when two people line up truth, and truth respects calendars. She held the rail and said the calendar at school has boxes you can touch. If you touch the wrong box, the teacher says, try again. I said teachers know how to save small hearts. She nodded, dropped to the sand with both feet, and asked if we could read before dinner to avoid sleep catching us mid-chapter. I said yes, and the yes made her shoulders drop. A parent at the benches scrolled, looked at me, looked down, and then tied a shoelace with busy fingers. We walked to the supermarket, and the scanner beeped in a slow rhythm that kept our thoughts quiet. The cashier said the system lagged. I said we had time. A couple behind us whispered in half-breaths and looked at their phones like news could make them generous. I watched the lane number because numbers do not gossip. We bought milk, bread, and 2 peaches because peaches promise a season that keeps its word. Outside, the air smelled like warm plastic and a little rain. We drove home without music. Silence is a clean cloth you can set on a table before you work. In the stairwell, the light was kind. The elevator doors opened, and our neighbor Kay held a parcel, nodded a small nod that says thin walls have ears and decent people know when to keep them closed. I nodded back. Inside, I set 2 mugs on opposite counters and wiped a ring of water around the sink drain until it became part of the steel. I lined the binders again, home, auto, bank, and let the thin utilities binder try to learn obedience under my palm. I flipped the mail stack so addresses faced down. I placed an unsealed envelope in the outbox and left it there like a breath I would release when the room widened. A calendar ping blinked on my phone, Harbor 9:15 a.m., and I swiped it away. I looked at the wall planner and let the red circle blur. Blurring can be a kind of mercy when you are not ready to hold a shape in your hands. I checked the small USB under the taxes folder and pressed the tape. It held. I locked the drawer. The soft click sounded like a period at the end of a sentence I had written with actions for several days. Marla called from the balcony to a friend about doing a live Q&A to teach about miracle timing. She laughed in the sweet wireless tone people use when rooms cannot correct them. I opened my laptop and minimized the screen when she crossed behind me, not because I hide, but because boundaries are a form of care. The hallway vent carried a faint smell of warm printer toner from a neighbor. Somewhere a shredder hummed, then stopped as if the page had chosen silence. I set the clipboard back under the lamp, the word statement steady in its plainness. I laid a pen across it and did not touch it. I wrote a row in the spreadsheet. Park question, checkout stairs, balcony plan announced. A cloud sync notice rose. File uploaded successfully. I closed it with my thumb without reading the rest. Rhea polished a tiny rock at the table with her thumb and said, "Shine arrives slowly." I said, "Slow is a friend to good work." She smiled without lifting her head and kept polishing. We read 2 chapters and a half page to keep sleep from interfering, then she curled under her blanket and let the book rest on the nightstand like a bridge between today and tomorrow. I stood in the doorway until my breathing matched hers. Back in the main room, I placed a single audio file with only today's date into Archive B and watched the progress bar fill like a patient line of paint. I renamed a contact to a single emoji so the screen would not shout if it lit. I listened to the apartment tell me it would stay still if I kept my own hands still. Edith knocked and walked in without waiting. She set her purse on the counter as if placing a stamp on a document. She said the family was embarrassed by my behavior and that I had started a war by refusing to celebrate. I said I had asked for true dates, not applause. She said if I took this to a place with papers, she would refuse to take sides while taking a side. I said I was speaking about home rules and the safety of a child, and that I would not argue about definitions in my kitchen. She looked at Rhea and told her grown-ups play pretend to help with hard days. Rhea looked at me with the small echo of a question. I said pretend is for books, not for rooms where feelings sleep. Edith told me to grow up and stop being a numbers man. I said numbers keep bridges from falling. She turned to leave, then pivoted, and said my name in a way that tried to make a warning sound like a blessing. I let the word pass without lodging anywhere. She left, and the door clicked with the blunt noise of a period. I stood by the wall planner and felt the red circle hold steady. I spoke one sentence inside my head once. I will handle this properly. The sentence fit like a tool in a palm. I did not explain it to the room. I went to the balcony, and the plants brushed each other like dry paper. Across the way, a neighbor's lamp clicked off. A car parked below facing the street and idled for a moment, then left. I breathed 4 counts in and 4 counts out and let patients sit down next to me. Marla came inside with her phone still bright and said a brand wanted her to host a live about faith over fear and that my energy should not obstruct. I said our daughter would not appear on any live, any post, any story, any caption. She laughed at the ceiling. She said I was rigid. I said I was careful. She moved past the table, and a text preview lit and vanished on her screen as if the message knew better than to show its face. She put the phone in a pocket and said, "The world wants joy." I said joy is safe when it is true. She rolled her eyes at the floor as if the floor had volunteered to be blamed. I walked to the door with the unsealed envelope still quiet in the outbox and listened. The hallway held a thin buzz. Footsteps approached and stopped outside our door. The pause stretched, then ended. The elevator doors down the hall opened and closed. Rhea stirred and settled. I let my shoulders drop. I turned off the lamp and let the apartment remember night. Elevator bell. The elevator bell rang once. Marla's phone lit with a new thread called Follow Up and dimmed under her thumb, and down the hall the printer spooled a page and cut off mid-feed, and I understood that the next room would have higher glass and different rules, and that I had already chosen to walk into it without asking anyone to clap. Morning came in clean squares on the counter, and dust drifted through the beam like quiet plans waiting their turn. I placed 2 mugs on opposite sides of the sink and let the space between them hold the words I did not want to repeat. Rhea asked for toast and the honey with the stubborn lid. I warmed her plate under the tap so the butter would soften instead of break the bread. Marla walked in with the phone already bright and said a brand had confirmed a live about miracle timing. She said the world loved joy and would stand with her. I said our daughter would not appear in any post, any story, any slide. She laughed at the window and said I was afraid of light. I said I was careful with children. I poured coffee, and the mugs stayed where I had placed them, facing the same room from different sides like 2 flags that meant what they meant without waving. After drop-off, the apartment felt like a workshop set for a careful task. I lined 3 narrow binders under the lamp, home, auto, bank, then slid the thin utilities binder beside them. Its corner lifted the way it always did, and I pressed it flat because habit sometimes wants proof that hands still know what they can shape. I flipped the mail stack so addresses face down. I set the clipboard that shows only statement at the table's edge and laid a pen across it like a bar that would lift when the time decided to lift it. A phone alarm labeled paper drop hummed once. I stopped it before the second tone. I opened my laptop, and the spreadsheet with initials and dates felt like rails. I added 3 lines. Long table vote, park question, balcony plan announced. A cloud sync box rose and said, "File uploaded successfully." I closed it before the word successfully could echo. I checked the small USB under the taxes folder and pressed the tape with my thumb. It held. I locked the drawer and listened for the soft click that turns patience into a thing you can hear. At work, the field office kept its square song. I cleared a ticket on a frayed patch cable, replaced a failing SFP that had been blinking like a nervous eye, and started a routine sweep on a panel that likes to drift on warm days. Bram sent a calendar block that read quick word. In his corner, he asked if I needed time. I said I was steady and documenting. He asked me to forward any tags that touched the company name. I said I would. He said the word support with the tone he saves for nets that hold without show. On the way back, the small printer by the mail slots exhaled another blank page. I slid it behind the others in my notebook. 3 blank sheets now felt like boards laid over a gap. Not a bridge yet, but a crossing you can trust for a few careful steps. I walked the loading dock during lunch and counted in sets of 4 while dust floated like tired confetti in a stripe of sun. Counting turned the day into a rhythm that did not ask me to dance. A coworker messaged a simple, "You good?" I answered steady, "Thanks." No more words were needed. A meme landed in a group tag with my name under a caption about business trips, math, and miracles. I took screenshots, saved them to Archive A with the time, and put the phone face down. Fast hands are friends of mistakes. Slow hands build shelves. I opened the spreadsheet and wrote a dry row. Repost from cousin. Heart reactions increase. Caption mocks counting. I closed the file. The cloud sync lifted its banner and I lowered it again. A private call rang once and left. I let it. I reseated a loose module and waited until the LED went steady green. Steady green is a small mercy, and I received it. On my way home, I passed the gym. Kellen stood near the poster with a crown sketch and adjusted his collar like the glass had asked for it. He lifted his chin when he saw the car slow, and then looked at his reflection to finish the conversation with himself. The light changed, and I left. At the apartment, I flipped the mail stack so paper hid names and addresses like the room had asked for privacy. I placed the binders under the lamp and pressed the utilities binder flat again, not to win, only to practice steadiness. I opened my laptop and moved a short audio file into Archive B with only a date for a name. The progress bar slid forward like a clean brushstroke. The hallway vent carried a faint scent of warm printer toner. Somewhere a shredder hummed, then cut off mid-syllable. I looked at the wall planner and let the red circle blur while my eyes softened. Blurring is not denial, it is rest. Rhea and I read 2 chapters early so sleep would not come between us and the last page. She said shine arrives slowly and kept polishing a small rock with her thumb. I said slow is a friend to good work. She smiled without looking up and continued, trusting the rock to learn. When she slept, I lifted the book and set it on the nightstand like a small bridge into tomorrow. I returned to the table and watched the lamp's circle hold the binders, the clipboard, the pen, the blank pages. Marla crossed the room with the phone raised and said a live Q&A would teach the value of trusting the heart over math. I said our daughter would not be used. She rolled her eyes at the ceiling. She said I was rigid. I said I was careful. She walked to the balcony and told someone she would clear the air and educate the negative. The hallway held the sound of footsteps approaching. The steps paused outside our door, then moved on. The elevator doors opened, then closed. I let my shoulders drop and said one sentence in a tone meant for rails and bridges, not for applause. I said I will handle this properly. She heard the sentence and laughed at the window because windows do not argue. That night the apartment settled into its shallow bowl of quiet. The guest bed showed a crease where I had smoothed it, and it kept the crease. The thin utilities binder held its corner down for a rare minute, then lifted, proving plastic keeps its nature. I placed a single USB labeled with a date in my pocket to test the feeling of weight. I put it back. I did not need to carry that weight yet. I locked the drawer and listened to the click. Footsteps pause outside the door. The pause laid a line across the evening. The hallway printer spooled and stopped as if the paper had changed its mind. A muted call lit my screen as private and went dark, and the room told me the next steps would be daytime steps in a public place where the rules are printed on signs and nobody gets to improvise the ending. The hospital cafeteria held a soft brightness that was no one's mood. Noon traffic moved in slow lanes between a salad bar and a counter where trays clicked. A public address chime rolled across the ceiling and then settled like a hand on a table. I stood near a pillar with a directory board that listed the prenatal class upstairs and a lab 2 floors down. I was 1 minute early because early is the kind of quiet you can control. I kept my hands at my sides. The floor shone the way floors shine when machines do the talking. A cart rattled by with a stack of cups wrapped in plastic. People carried sandwiches that had nothing to do with me. A child in a red hat pointed at the escalator and laughed because stairs that move are always funny. Kai stood in a corner far enough to be furniture. He fixed his weight the way he does when his job is to be a line, not a wall. He did not wave. He did not speak. Kay, our neighbor, walked through with a parcel, saw me, and gave a small nod that says decency does not need an audience. I nodded back and watched the revolving door take a piece of the street and let it go. Edith came into view first, jaw set, lipstick firm, eyes already choosing a caption. She looked up at the ceiling lights as if their neat rows told her she would win. Marla followed with quick steps and a practiced smile shaped for lenses. The lens was not here. The cafeteria was. Kellen paced near the escalator in a tracksuit with a logo that liked itself. He checked his reflection in the black glass of a dark TV mounted high near the cereal dispensers. It liked him back in a way that screens do for men like him. The licensed server stepped into the open with that careful exactness people use when distance is part of the message. The voice did not need volume. It needed shape. Marla's full name was requested and confirmed. The words after were the kind that have been said many times in many rooms and still matter every time. There was no flourish. The packet was held level, plain, and ready. The server finished the sentence that marks a line and summarized the immediate effect, not as an argument, but as a list, because lists are bridges between confusion and order. I did not move. I did not speak. The tray line kept clicking because trays have their own work to do. The summary stated that a court-ordered DNA test notice had been issued with specific logistics: lab location, date, time, and required identification. The summary included temporary measures meant to keep peace while facts were gathered. It described conduct rules for common spaces, restrictions on posting our child's image or name without joint consent, and a clear request for no taunting captions that turn private harm into public sport. It named a status date. It did not point fingers. It pointed to a calendar. Kellen shifted his weight and studied his phone as if a message might appear and tell him this was a prank. Edith opened her mouth to form the word harassment and then closed it because the cafeteria did not carry that word the way her living room does. Phones near us lowered without instruction. People like stories, but they respect signs about hot surfaces. Marla's hand met the packet as if gravity had chosen a different direction for 1 second. Paper touched palm and decided to stay. She looked down, then up, then back down, as if she could trade languages mid-page. The script that worked on rooftops and long tables and lives with comments did not work in rooms with PA chimes and tray rails. The licensed server stepped back 2 careful paces. The guard at the door, who had been pretending to read a poster about volunteer hours, gave his attention to the space, then returned it to the poster. He did not need to do more. A nurse pushed past with a laugh about coffee. A stack of plastic forks fell and made the bright clatter of ordinary life. The cafeteria air did not change. The escalator hummed and carried Kellen 1 step down before he decided to ride it all the way. He looked back once to see if a mirror would follow him, then let the moving stairs decide his speed. Edith held her purse as if it weighed her down from the wrist, then set it on the table and took it back up again because setting things down is not her habit. She whispered something that tried to turn this into a scene needing soft words. The cafeteria declined, and her whisper had nowhere to land. The directory board scrolled. The lights remained the same temperature they had been all day. Kai tilted his head once in the way that means, I am with you. Do not spend me. I breathed in for 4 and out for 4. The rhythm had carried me through pipes, rooftops, memes, votes at long tables, and a small child's honest math. It carried me here. The server confirmed that service was complete and that the notice's instructions were now in Marla's hand. The words sat on the air like a chair that will not wobble. I kept my hands at my sides. I did not chase anyone's face. I did not offer any line. I did not need to perform being right. I only needed to stand where the light was the same for everyone. A volunteer in a bright vest adjusted a sign about a blood drive and stepped aside without looking at us. A tray bumped a trash can and made a familiar hollow ring. The PA chime sounded the quarter hour like a bell that has never learned to be dramatic. Marla held the packet, and the packet did not become lighter because she stared at it. She said words that tried to explain to the air that love outruns dates and that tests cannot touch destiny. The air did not pick up those words. The air was busy being air in a room that had schedules. The server, having finished the duty, stepped to the edge of the scene and became a person buying soup. The guard studied the volunteer poster again. The cafeteria went on. The day kept being noon. I thought of Ree asking if babies start before or after goodbyes, and of how school calendars have boxes you can touch with a finger. I thought of the small ship in the book that finds a safe line by looking at stars and not crowds. I thought of the 3 blank pages in my notebook that let me cross a short gap without falling. I thought of 2 mugs set on opposite counters and the way the space between them had kept me from shouting. I thought of the sentence I had said in our kitchen more than once with no push on any word. I will handle this properly. I had handled it. Edith lifted her chin to begin a scolding about respect, and then she saw the sign that said no filming in this area and lowered her hand. Kellen reached the bottom of the escalator, glanced at the ceiling as if a camera might have chosen him, then slid toward the exit and let the outside swallow him. A child in the red hat tugged a sleeve and pointed at the prenatal class listing and asked a question that made the parent bend low. The revolving door kept pulling and letting go, exactly as designed. The server's voice, now soft with ordinary purpose, said the last required line to the guard and to the space between us. Service complete. The words did not float. They landed on tile and stayed there like a weight you cannot see but can feel under your feet. I took one breath that lasted the length of the chime's echo and then another that lasted the length of the escalator's hum. I did not celebrate. I did not mourn. I stood still the way a person stands when a line has been drawn, and it is not his job to move it. Cafeteria PA chime. The chime lifted and fell once more. The revolving doors drew a stripe of cool air across the floor. Marla gripped the packet with fingers that understood paper better than captions. Edith's mouth shaped a word that did not choose her. The noon crowd flowed like water around a stone, and the room declared, in its clean language, that enough had been said. Cut. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.